Okay, hi everyone. So it's SmithyQ from SmithyQ.com, and we're back with the next installment of Smithy's Greatest Losses. This is an ongoing series where we're going to look at some of my most common mistakes, the mistakes that I made the most often, and how I eventually learned from them. Some mistakes I just repeated over and over again, and I eventually overcame them. And hopefully, if you make these types of mistakes, you can recognize them, stop making them yourself, but also perhaps you could see that in other people, in your opponents, and then you could use that there. Last time we talked about king safety, but it's very specific type where I would not castle, and then I often had this bizarre habit of running my king into the middle of the board, which didn't work very well. Here today we're going to look at kind of the exact opposite, where I did everything right, I've castled, but then my king still gets checkmated. So let's look at some of the mistakes that I make with my castled king. This is the first example that I found in my database, and I think it's the clearest, and it shows an extremely common, very thematic idea. So in this position, I'm black, and my opponent, let's see if I can get on the board, there we go, just played queen h5, very clear idea, mating on h7. There's a couple of things that black could do to defend this, and in the game, I played h6, and then white just tore right through. Took. Uh-oh, it's still mating on h7, but now I have absolutely no pawns, and it's really hard to defend. I brought the knight back. Knight comes in, now the threat's mating on g7. Okay, the knight comes back, I'm trying to defend the g7, but simply take, and that's mate. Whoops. So, pretty brutal. So what happened here? In this position, again, he's threatening mate. I played h6, and I'm perfectly happy. I'm perfectly fine. Even though the next move, bishop takes h6, is a very common, very thematic, and this position extremely powerful sacrifice, which I did not consider at all. And then, at this point, there's no defenders left. And so it's really this position that's key. Because this is the type of mistake that I make over and over again, of where I've got 3 pawns in front of my king, and that's about it. I have no other defenders. And this move, it's extremely common, extremely powerful. And if I were to flip the board over, and this were a tactical puzzle, white to play and win, I'd probably find this with white, very, very quickly. But as black, I don't think about it at all. This is an extremely common error, extremely common thought process error, of where we basically ignore our opponent's threats, or we don't calculate or treat them near as seriously as we should. This is an extremely common thing that I did again and again and again. I'm defending with nothing but pawns, and then a rather simple sacrifice tears me apart. We're going to see varieties of this throughout many of the next examples. So let's take a look at a few. But before we go any further, actually, I just wanted to highlight one important thing involving pattern recognition. And this example is A, hilarious, and B, very much to the point. So again, I'm black, and my opponent, he ends up playing bishop to b2, very clear idea, mating here on g7. A couple things that I could have done. So I ended up playing knight f6. Just watch how the game develops. He plays h3, okay, take. I play this. So now the idea here, he wants to push this, chase my knight, mate on g7. So I just ignored it. But that's fine, because I'm able to bring my knight all the way here, and I'm able to defend g7, everything is fine. Except it actually goes all the way to h8, and that's mate. And so what's incredible, I still vaguely remember this game, actually, is that right here on bishop b2, the threat that I saw instantly was the mate on g7. Okay, I can defend that. But there's also a mate threat on h8. And somehow this was completely invisible to me. And of course, if a move's invisible, if you can't see it, there's no way you can stop it. And so, this is something, I'm not going to harp on this one too much, though it's somewhat common in my games. if you've never seen a particular mating threat or a mating pattern before, again, it's really difficult to stop. And I guess through experience, you eventually learn them, though it's a lot better if you learn them through a tactics book, say. But there are many examples of where I do not defend against a threat because I don't see the threat, because I've never seen it before. So in every other game where I've seen this, this battery, it's always been mate on G7. And yet H8 is just as possible. And so this is where that pattern recognition becomes really important. The more patterns you know, the less likely you're going to be mated on H8 on a one-move blunder. I just found that hilarious. But anyway, these are going to be sort of the two central themes that we're going to look at through the rest. Is here, like this, pattern recognition, just learning some of the common attacking ideas and mating patterns. That also then B is just making sure we're defending with enough pieces. And how sacrifices are very, very possible, often very obvious, but I still walk into them anyway. So let's look at a few examples. So here we go. I'm black again. I think I'm black in every example. So my queen's attacked. I ended up moving my queen here. Knight comes in. Take. It's this position. I need to make a move. So my king's still in the center. Castling makes a lot of sense, right? Let's castle. Now, hopefully you actually calculate a little bit more than I just did in this position, because that was certainly my thought process. I need to castle. Let's castle. Hope for the best. And so after simply take, we can see actually the exact same thing. The very first example is that now I have no defenders near my king. I did not consider this sacrifice at all, even though it's extremely thematic. And then after bishop to g7, it's attacking the rook, and again, threatening mate on g7. I ended up playing f5, but there wasn't anything else I could do. Check, boom, and that's mate. And so once more, there's nothing, if I were to flip the board, you show this position to me, hey Smithy, even young Smithy, right? Like, find a good move for white. It's not hard to see this sacrifice, but I did not consider it at all. Back up. So just for fun, what's a better move? There's a couple of interesting ideas. Queen c7 is fine. Rook d8 maybe is okay. But the best move would be queen to b4, which attacks the rook. It's threatening mate on the back rank, and it's also, just imagine that's pointing at the knight. There we go. Threatening a pawn. So this completely solves all my problems. Wonderful. And if I would have spent more than, 12 seconds on this move, I perhaps would have founded that. Or at least would have realized that castling is actually extremely dangerous, because after a thematic sacrifice, I'm in huge trouble. I've got no defenders, and my pawn cover is ruined. It seemed as if I thought castling is fine. I did not consider my opponent's threats, even though they're extremely obvious. Let's look at the next example. So now in this, and then in the next example, we're going to be looking at the position right before the mating attack. The last few have been relatively simple. Let's look what happened, right before, because that's often just as critical, if not more critical, of how we get into such bad positions. So here we am. So as promised, I'm black again. And if you know anything about theory, about chess openings in general, you might vaguely recognize this as some type of Sicilian dragon, and you'd be right. And white's typical strategy is to throw the pawns and try and open some lines, checkmate the black king. Black's idea is, of course, to do the exact opposite. You can see, get something like this, and try and checkmate the white king. So it should be a race. But we'll see what happens in this game. For the record, this was in 2001. I was about 1,500. My opponent was 1,900. So my opponent was much better than me. Watch what my opponent does. Or more accurately, look at how I react to my opponent's play. He plays h4, so he attacks me. I react. He throws another pawn at me. I react. He throws a pawn at me. I react. So I'm being A, extremely greedy, just gobbling up pawns. But B, I'm just reacting to the moves that he's doing. I haven't started my counterplay at all. And then from here, some extremely easy moves just blow me wide open. The exchanges, and then take, take. And look what's happened. Is that I only have pawns near my king. That last move, of course, was a sacrifice. He easily finds an extremely easy move. And the queen comes in, and now it's just a rather simple lawnmower style mate. There we go. Do you see how easy white made that look? Because this entire time is that I'm just reacting. Now, I didn't play the opening very well either, so I didn't have an extremely good position to start with. But he just throws the pawns, and then I just take, and then I take, and I allow him to exchange all my defenders. And then it's just complete annihilation. Which is, of course, not very good. But at the same time, if we go back to the pattern recognition idea, is that I had never seen this type of, or more accurately, this G4, and then this coming in. Or if I had seen it, it hadn't been very often. It certainly didn't get stuck into the old memory banks there. Because this just, it seemed like it was pure brilliance on my opponent. But again, for anyone who has any experience in this type of opposite castle position, especially with the fianchettos, the idea of exchanging the bishop, of opening the H-file, are some of the most common patterns, which I needed to learn. I didn't do it very well. Oh well, let's look at a couple more. So here we go. The last example, I'd already started in a pretty poor position, and it just went downhill very quickly. This is the opposite. I'm actually in quite a good position here. If you count the material, I'm up quite a bit, actually, which is great. Material is good. On the downside is that these guys aren't doing anything yet. White has open files for an attack. His pieces are kind of generally looking at my kingside, but he has nothing imminent right now. So things are good. I just need to figure out what to do. Let's look what happens. Or basically, let's look how I blow this position. So I start with b6. I'm going to develop my bishop. Yay, that's good. He ends up playing queen to e2. Then I exchange. Look what this does. So this bishop could be a useful defender, right? Dropping back to f6, or even, play g6. Bishop goes back to g7. And instead, I exchange it. So that ruins his pawn structure. Great. But I don't have any developed pieces anymore. I play bishop to b7. Knight goes to g5. You see some threats here. Pretty common. So I play g6 to stop it. He comes over. Maybe he wants to come down to f6. I bring my king over. He brings the rook over. Do we see some themes already? Is that I have no pieces near my king, and I'm defending with pretty much just pawns. Which is okay. Which is fine up till now. Right? I'm still okay if I do a good move. I played d5, which is not a very good move. So what's my opponent's threat? My opponent's threat is to come in, invade on f6. I need to do something to stop that. What do? Well, let's see here. Let's see. So, moving the queen is certainly possible, but easiest is probably just f6. Kicks the knight away. We can even start running with the king. We can got the rooks come open with open files, chase the knight away. Everything is great. Everything is great. But I don't do that. I ended up playing d5, which, if anything, is just blocking my bishop in. Oh my goodness. And this here, I did not consider my opponent's follow-ups. I did not consider what he could do. I probably grossly underestimated his attacking potential. Queen f6, of course. And now, oh my goodness, now the threat is to slide in here. And we can see how difficult it is to defend because my pawns are in the way, my pieces are over here. What do? I offer a queen exchange. Of course, he doesn't want to. And then I just take a pawn. Wow, look at that. Thinking, look, the bishop's attacked, it's attacked, and if the bishop were to move somewhere, maybe I got this check, everything's going to be great. But he just ignores it. He slides the rook over. Oh, we know this one now. There's something happening down in h8. Now I play f6, but it's a little too late. And that's mate. See what happened here in this position? Is that I only have pawns near my king. And in fact, I created a position right here where only pawns could defend my king. I completely neglected this. And the move that I probably missed was right here, if I was even calculating at all. What should I have done? Just for the record, is, well, just keep offering the queen exchange, right? If he tries to move, well, we can get some e5, and if he just keeps going back and forth. Okay, it's a draw, but I'm not losing. This is probably the best I can, because again, he's attacking. He's got 4 pieces into this attack, so exchanging queens should have been my main concern. And of course, instead, I try to win an extra pawn or something. Oh dear. I've got maybe, I think there's one more. Okay. So this is the last example we're going to look at. And it's going to show, I think, just about everything. But specifically, everything. So it's in this position. I'm actually white. Woohoo! We can see we got the opposite side castling. Likely want to be some sort of attack, right? Well, that's where you're wrong. Because I take the pawn. Which pawn? h7. Unbelievable. Even though, after g6, and my bishop is kind of trapped. Oh, it's stuck. I don't know what's going on. So I play h3. He moves back. I think I'm okay, though, because take, queen takes. I've got 3 pawns for the piece. And in the process, I've completely opened up all the lines directly to my king. I move my queen back. He comes here. Boom. And then we can see the problems already, is that he's able to win a pawn because of the pin facing on my king. And if we just look at this game quickly, is that I try and... Nope, nah, he wins a knight. Uh-oh. I now jump in towards him. Take. I coming in. So at least I'm trying to create some threats near him. But we can see here, once more, he's got, everything against me. And what do I have? Nothing. No, I did lose a piece, right? But it's just pawns. And again, there's no real good moves at this point anyway. But again, the sacrifices, they just open me completely up. And so the real mistake in this game, right, in terms of the king safety, is for some reason, I'm thinking about opening the h-file for my opponent by taking this. Again, if we also think about pattern recognition, is that I apparently did not think about this very common idea of playing g6, trapping the bishop. Let's change its color. Red? Red. There we are. So not only am I opening the file, I'm losing a piece, and even though I win a couple of pawns, it's kind of the wrong pawns, right? I'd much rather have won these pawns over here. But what's especially galling is that, in this position, I could have started the attack right away. Look, we're threatening mate. We're also threatening a7. Let's say, I don't know, he plays, c6 to kick me back. You've got take. If he goes here, right, I just win the pawn. If he goes here, the knight's in no danger being trapped because it's pinned, right? He can always come back out. You can imagine something like the rook slides over, and right, that's just a sample line, but we could see how easy this could have been. These are all moves that I played eventually, or I tried to play them in the game, But first, I had a completely wrong focus. Is that I did not even consider opening lines for my opponent about the attacking possibilities that it would have brought. Just the complete wrong. And so then, of course, we reach this position where I'm completely helpless and there's nothing that I can do. Because I've opened all the lines for my opponent. Where, again, if we were to flip, I'd be so happy as black right now. Because my opponent, he won all the pawns. Now I can attack. I've got everything against his king. I mean, this is a dream position. But as white, I did not consider it at all. And so, if there is a overarching theme that I can get from all of these games, right, it would be, well, primarily, you need to concern yourself with your opponent's ideas and your opponent's threats. It is harder to see your opponent's ideas. It's just one of those bizarre things. When the board's this way, you can see all of white's ideas. When the board's this way, you can see all of black's ideas, right? But you need to pay attention. You need to put just as much effort into your opponent's ideas as your own. This is actually perhaps the thing that increased my strength the most is, every move. What is my opponent's threat? What can my opponent do? Trying to stop that. Because if your opponent can't do his threats, well, you're probably not going to lose the game. And if you're not going to lose, well, there's a pretty good chance you're going to win, right? And it's just, well. So again, if there is that grand takeaway, it would be that you have to always consider your opponent's threats. And then in particular for me, is that, again, sacrifices. This is not even a sacrifice. None of this is a sacrifice. But sacrifices and having your own king undefended, of only using pawns nearby. You see, I just continue to throw my pieces away from my king. Which, in fairness, in this position, I mean, I'm losing regardless. Maybe I'll get lucky. But extremely common errors throughout. Only using pawns and not having near enough defenders. Fortunately, I think this is going to be the end of the general mistakes that I make in the part. That is, the rest of the mistakes I make aren't so very common across multiple games. I eventually got a bit better. I'm not just hanging pieces. And so the rest of this series is going to be about specific games and specific moments in specific games where I didn't know something, right? And where the loss actually taught, like the specific game will have taught me, as opposed to here where it's more general themes that I eventually had to learn. So these, in other words, the first 4 of these videos is a bit more the beginner side, and then the rest are going to be as I've approached the intermediate and potentially advanced, depending if you consider me an advanced player or not. So hopefully you found that interesting, helpful, entertaining. You could laugh at some of my mistakes, but there we are. And that's going to be it for now. So thanks for watching. I hope everyone's safe out there. And that's it. So take care, everyone. Bye for now.